Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachakodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahushai is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahushai. And pretty much, a lot of the topics and videos that I'm doing, I already have done them on my older channels that got banned. So, what I like to do is, when I gotta start all over again, I gotta bring up all them old topics again. And, it's the spirit. You see guys go off on a doctrine. You do videos to correct them, to feed our people with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. All right? But the so-called white man and his seed line, which are the biblical Edomites, which includes them so-called Jewish people in our promised land, these people try to use the curse of Ham to justify slavery, the transatlantic slave trade, all the different slave trades, the Indian Ocean slave trade, British, Dutch, Iberian, all the slave trades that took place. And that's not true at all. The Israelites, first of all, we're Shemites, all right? Matter of fact, it's the spirit. I'm just going to read this real quick. It's an oldie but goodie. This is from the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. It's the 1963 edition, but, the modern editions is still the same definition, all right? So this is the definition from Ham. It says perhaps hot, so that's what it means. That's why them Hamites, they so dark, all right? They're not actually black, they just dark brown. Nobody on the planet Earth is black, like a black t-shirt or like a black shirt. If you put the darkest shirt on a Hamite, he's not going to be the same color as the shirt, because everybody's supposed to be different shades of brown, all right? But the Edomites, they have the curse of Cain on them. So the Most High, he put that distinguishing mark on them because they're the descendants of Cain. Remember, Cain, he had that mark that was placed on him, and he died. And everybody comes back in a reincarnation. And the scriptures tell you there's no remembrance of the former things, but it does tell you that there is life after death, and that you have to play out your judgment for what you did in your past lives, your previous incarnation. So when Cain came back as Esau, he came back with that distinguishing mark, which was what? His pigmentation was stripped away from him. And you got to question this. How come, if everybody's different shades of brown, how come the so-called white man and his seed line, the original look of them, is that they're the only nation that doesn't have pigmentation? Is that by coincidence? Is it because they so special and unique looking and they got yellow hair, as the scriptures say? Because they like to hide behind, oh, my hair is blonde. No, your shit is yellow. All right, the scriptures call it yellow. It's yellow. It's leprosy of the hair, leprosy of the eyes. But our people look at these inferior ass people as something unique, something special. Oh, my grandmother had blue eyes. Like, if that's so special. But anyways, let's read this, all right? Because one of the biggest lies is that the so-called Negroes, which are actually descendants of Shem, are Hamites, and that's a lie. So this is the definition. It says, the youngest son of Noah, which really Japheth was the eldest, Ham was the second eldest, and then the youngest was actually Shem or Shem, all right? But that's not the point. This is the point. It says, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood, he became a progenitor, meaning the first, proving that what? You are what your father is, according to your father's seed line. When you read in Genesis, the 10th chapter, it's naming only men. How come it's not naming women? Because women don't carry seed. This is why a woman, they're not supposed to be reproducing or having relationships with heathen men. Because if you get pregnant by them, that's not the nation of Israel no more. They're not the seed of the promise. They're going to inherit some genetic makeup from the mom, but that seed line, which is their identity, the culture they're going to take up on, the characteristics of that particular individual, that's based off of the seed of the father. All right. So Ham became the progenitor, meaning the first of the dark races, but it's going to get more in depth, not the Negroes. So hold up. When people say that, oh, well, you know, you're getting mad at so-called white people, so-called Edomites, which they're not so-called Edomites, excuse me. You're getting mad at so-called white people, right? But your people sold their people to the Arabs, to the Jewish Edomites. But that's not true. These people are a different nation. They're a different seed line with a different culture, all right? These Hamites are not Negroes. They're not the Heavenly Father's chosen people. We're two different people. They was able to distinguish us from them based off of what? Our culture, us having beards, turbans, just being different customs, different philosophies, different religious practices. So it was easy for them through the wrath of the Most High to what? Round us up and to sell us, all right? Because when you read in the history, and I'm going to do a video after this showing you a particular tribe that was a Hamite tribe, and they sold us to the Amalekites, all right, which are the Jewish Edomites. They sold us to the Arabs, all right? So you need to understand, when we fled from Roman persecution in 70 AD, that's what's in Luke, the 21st chapter, for verses 20 through 24, most of us settled in the interiors of Africa or the wilderness of Zin, all right? And what happened is the fact that we used to go to war a lot with the Hamitic nations while we was in Africa, all right? So through the wrath of the Most High, we lost a lot of those battles and we got sold, all right? It was just Bible prophecy that had to be fulfilled. So it says not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians. The Lord said his sword is against the Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Now, you do have Israelites that are scattered amongst the Hamites. You even have Israelites that participated in this particular slave trade of the Hamites, you know, selling the Negroes, which are the Israelites, to the Arabs and the Amalekites, right? You have Israelites that actually think that they're Hamites, but they're not Hamites, all right? That's why you read stories about, you know, Nigerians selling Negro slaves, continuing on. So it says Libyans and Canaanites. So there you go. And then it says Genesis chapter 10, verses 6 through 20. His idiocy, when his father lay drunken, brought a curse upon Canaan. All right? So that curse fell upon those Canaanite tribes, mainly the Amorites that was in our land. So that's what we're going to get into. All right? But like, let's see the origin of this curse real quick. Because this curse of Ham, it applies to the title of it, Ham. And this is why. This is Genesis 9 and verse, let's see. Yeah, Genesis chapter 9 and 18. It says, and the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. Everybody on the planet Earth is a descendant from these three seed lines. All right, these three men. When you read in the Bible about particular genealogies, it never mentions women. Why? Because women don't carry seed. So why the hell do these people this line? Where's that in the Bible? Nobody questions nothing, but everybody is a scholar in the Bible. Everybody got Bibles in their house. They read it twice. This is what the average Christian would tell you. Oh, I read the Bible twice from Genesis to Revelation. Then when you ask them a question, they can't answer it, and then they want to fight you after. All right? These people go by a matriarchal line, meaning by the mother's line. But how can they go by the mother's line if women don't carry seed? That doesn't make sense. All right? So now, let's go back. So back to this. Genesis 9 and 18 again. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan, right? Father meaning what? Progenitor, the first. Everybody got an origin. Everybody got a seed line that they come from. Every seed line or nationality is not equal according to the Bible. When you read Deuteronomy 7 and 6 and all throughout the scriptures, the Lord tells you all throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, how he loved Jacob. Did we sin against the Lord? Yeah, but that's a part of the story. That's predestination. He gonna set us up through Yahushua when Yahushua come back. 19 now, getting back on topic. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. Overspread meaning through these 3 sons, the earth was repopulated, because a lot of people died in the flood for their wickedness, idolatry, fornication, right? They wasn't listening to Noah's message. It says, and Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, right? Because that's also a part of our culture. You know, agriculture, farming. That's real wealth, by the way. Having livestock, land, precious metals. You know, the water Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai for the apostles. Thanks to Apostle Tahar, I got into precious metals. You know, gold, silver, because that's real wealth. But continuing on, livestock, land. Continuing on, though. It says, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken. That's what Jakes like to do. That's what our people like to do. So-called Negroes, Hispanics, different Indian tribes of Central, South, and North America, Caribbean islands. We like to get lit. Ain't nothing wrong with that. It's just you got to be balanced with the drinking. And I speak to myself before anybody, right? But Yahushua, he liked to drink. Noah liked to drink. David liked to drink. All right. We even got a custom where we pour the liquor on the ground. Maybe I'll do a video on that one day. All right. For the dead. All that go back to our customs. Because we're Jews inwardly first. But continuing on, it says, and he drank of the wine and was drunken. So Noah was lit. All right. He was drunk, but he wasn't acting crazy and shit. And he was uncovered within his tent. So Noah was, you know, he was lit. He was blasted up in there. All right. But the point is what? He did that in the comfort of his own home. It's better for you to drink in your house than to drink out in public, because you could get in trouble. All right. And he was uncovered within his tent, meaning he was butt-ass naked. And Ham, the father of Canaan, right? Ham, the progenitor or father of Canaan. Because remember, before it was known as the promised land of Israel, what was it known as? It was known as the land of Canaan. Another word for Canaan as well, it means unknown. All right? Because even America was known as the land of Canaan, because this was an unknown region, an unknown land, an unknown territory where nobody was dwelling here before the 10 tribes of Israel. You had in 1 Kings, I believe, either 1st or 2nd Kings 10 from verses 20 through 22. All right. You had Hiram and his navy fleet that was in subjection to King Solomon. They would come to the Americas and get exotic animals, exotic resources, metals, and stuff like that. And they used to call Peru the land of Ophir. All right. Because when you actually come over here and do the research, they don't even sell 14 and 10 karat gold. They have 18 karat gold and higher. They have a higher carat of gold. All right. Continuing on. It says, because that was a trick question that Apostle Tahar asked years ago. Where's the land of Ophir? It's in Peru. It goes on to say, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness. When you read about in Genesis 19 about Sodom and Gomorrah, all right, those were Canaanites that was living within that land, homosexual Canaanites. And you can see they just like their father. Verse 22, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father. That's breaking the commandments right there. Now, another thing you need to understand is that before the law, statutes, and commandments was written on stone, given only to the Israelites, back during this time before the flood, it was like oral tradition. It was like the way of life. It didn't have to be written on stone, all right? The parents, they would just raise their children up to keep these particular laws, all right? So Ham, he was going off. He knew better than to do this. It says, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father. That goes against Leviticus, the 18th chapter. But like I said, the laws was oral back then. Certain things you just knew not to do, and certain things you can do. He saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. Let me read that in the NLT, see if it's going to say something different real quick. It's the NLT version. This is Genesis 9:22. Come on, internet, hurry up. Genesis 9:22, NLT. It says, Ham, the father of Canaan, saw that his father was naked and went outside and told his brothers. So he wasn't supposed to look upon his father's nakedness. See your father naked. It's just like as a child. You know, somebody's in a bathroom, they may have the door open or something, or, you know, you have a relative, they getting dressed, you may walk past the room. You know, you walk past with your back turned. Continuing on. It says, and Shem and Japheth took a garment, right, some clothes, and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward. That's what you're supposed to do, because they know that they would be violating the law. All right, they know that that would be wrong to look upon their father being butt-ass naked, because that happens sometimes. You get lit, you naked in your crib. It says, and went backward. So they didn't want to look on their father's nakedness. But who looked on the father's nakedness? Ham. It says, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward. That's what you're supposed to do. That's how I was raised as a child. All right? Certain things you just knew not to do. Don't look at your mother. Don't look at your father. Continuing on. It says, even your siblings, if you have some. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. They didn't see him naked. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son, Ham, had him. Meaning what? Noah knew about how Ham broke the law, how he looked upon his nakedness. He's supposed to know better than that. And he said, cursed be Canaan. So Noah cursed Canaan, which were going to be who? Ham's descendants. And this curse will be applied on the Israelites' conquest or their journey to the promised land, which would allow Joshua and Caleb to slay them Canaanite tribes that's in there. All right? It says, and he said, who's the he? Noah. Noah said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. All right? And he said, blessed be Yahweh God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And then it goes on to the different blessings that Japheth, Shem, and the other sons would get outside of Ham. So now let's read this real quick, right? So I typed in curse of Ham meaning. The curse of Ham is a biblical narrative from the book of Genesis where Noah curses his grandson Canaan after Ham discovers an intoxicated, naked Noah and tells his brothers. Historically, this passage was tragically misused to justify the enslavement and segregation. It says of African peoples, but no, it should say of Israelite people, all right, or Negro people, or people of Negro descent. Negro descent and Hamitic descent is two different sea lines, two different descents, two different genealogies, two different pedigrees, two different ancestries, right? So that's set with that. The misinterpretation and historical impact. For centuries, the story was weaponized to legitimize the transatlantic slave trade and American slavery. Proponents of slavery argued that Ham was the ancestor of black Africans, which he is the ancestor of black Africans, just not of Negro Israelites, interpreting the curse as the mark of a darker skin color. And that's a part of Mormonism, but that's stupid. To be dark skinned is not a curse. How the Edomites, they're the only pale nation that don't have any pigmentation, going back to the curse of Cain, but then African people are cursed. That's retarded. That's stupid. All right? It says, proponents of slavery argued that Ham was the ancestor of black Africans, which obviously he is, interpreting the curse as the mark of a darker skin color. The curse applied to the Amorites and the different Canaanite tribes that was living in the promised land of Israel that would allow Joshua and Caleb to kill them, all right? That's when that curse went into effect. The Lord allowed the iniquity of the Amorites to get to a certain level, and then we went in there and obliterated them. So it goes on to say, interpreting the curse as the mark of a darker skin color, which destined them to eternal servitude, which ultimately that would take place in the kingdom of heaven. This interpretation was used by leaders across Abrahamic regions with the arguments that the curse divinely ordained the subjugation of African peoples. So they'll tell you that they took this way out of context. So now, here's the curse. This is Genesis 15 and 16. It says, "But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet fulfilled." Who's the Amorites? The Amorites is them Canaanite tribes, them one of the 7 Canaanite tribes that was dwelling in the promised land of Israel. All right. So it says, "For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet fulfilled." Let's read that in the NLT version. Genesis 15 and 16. I'm going to read it on down. "After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land." What land? The promised land of Israel. Yahweh is telling Abram, whose name was changed to Ephraim, that the seed line of Jacob will return unto this land. How would the Most High know that? Because everything is predestination. All right? We in the Most High movie. People get mad, "Oh, what kind of God is this? When is he going to hurry up?" This is predestination. Just calm the fuck down. Just wait for him to act. Genesis 15 to 16, NLT version. "After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land. For the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destruction." All right? So what were the Canaanite tribes doing? They was committing idolatry. They was committing fornication. I'm going to show you. That's what the Lord said. Go in there and destroy everything you see in there. Burn it down. "After the sun went down and darkness fell, Abram saw a smoking firepot and a flaming torch pass between the halls of the carcasses. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram." The word Abram in Hebrew means exalted father, because he's one of the fathers of the promise. His name was changed to Abraham, which means father of a multitude, because out of Abraham comes a multitude of nations, including the seed of the promise. It says, "That day, and said, I have given this land." What land? The promised land of Israel. Go on Google, go to images, type in promised land of Israel, Genesis chapter 15, verses 18 to 21. So you can know the borders of it. All right? Because our land is bigger than just that Zionist created state of Israel and West Bank. It says, "I have given this land to your descendants all the way from the border of Egypt to the great river Euphrates." And I've done videos on this. Just scroll down on my channel. You can see the maps and everything. It says to the great river Euphrates. The land now occupied by the Canaanites, the Canaanites. These are different Canaanite tribes. Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. So the curse applies to what? Them being wiped out of the land, referring to the Canaanites by Joshua and Caleb. All right? That's why the curse got put on Canaan instead of Ham right in that moment, right in that particular generation, because the Lord already predestined this, that we was going to get that land. It already been ours when we was the sons of God, placed eastward of Edom. All right? So now let's close that out. That's why I typed in Google, because I was looking for the precept. Iniquity of the Amorites been fulfilled. Yes, the iniquity of the Amorites was ultimately fulfilled, right? And that iniquity go back to what? The curse of Ham was ultimately fulfilled. According to Genesis 15 and 16, Yahweh delayed giving the land of Canaan to Abraham's descendants because the Amorites' sin had not yet reached its full measure. This delay lasted for about 400 years while the Israelites were in Egypt. We was in Egypt for a total of 430 years. All right, Joseph being there for 30 years, and then our oppression as the entire nation for 400. During which Yahweh showed patience toward the Amorites, right? However, their wickedness eventually crossed a moral threshold involving practices like idolatry, violence, and child sacrifice. Once this threshold was reached, the iniquity was considered complete, serving as the moral and divine justification for the Israelites to conquer the land under Joshua. All right? So now, let me just read this now. Deuteronomy chapter 7. They got it in Spanish here. I gotta switch it to the KJV. Oh, come on, man. See how Satan is, man? I like to just slide through my lessons. Now it's saying error, internet disconnected. Come on, man. All right. Turn my data on. There we go. Can't stop this truth. So this is in Espanol. Let's read it in the NLT version. This is Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 1. It says, the privilege of the holiness. It says, when the Lord your God, which is Yahweh our God, brings you into the land you are about to enter and occupy, he will clear away many nations ahead of you. The Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. These 7 nations are greater and more numerous than you, because every nation was established before the Israelites became established as a nation, because we became a nation in exile. All right. When the Lord your God, which is interpreted as Yahweh your God, hands these nations over to you and you conquer them, you must completely destroy them. All right, we're supposed to completely destroy them, not reproduce with them. It says, make no treaties with them and show them no mercy. Meaning we got the green light from the Father to kill these evil ass nasty people, right? Referring to the Canaanite, they nasty. It says, you must not intermarry with them. Do not let your daughters and sons marry their sons and daughters. This applies to this particular generation. All right, the Lord didn't want us breeding with them. You cannot use these verses as an excuse that, oh, there's a Mamzar doctrine. Oh, Israelites can't have sex with heathen women and reproduce. We can't have concubines. No, this applied to the journey or the conquest to the promised land. It says, for they will lead your children away. They will lead your children away from me to worship other gods. Then the anger of Yahweh will burn against you, and he will quickly destroy you. This is what you must do. You must break down their pagan altars and shatter their scarce pillars, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their idols. KJV, what we all familiar with. It says, verse 6, for thou art a holy people unto Yahweh thy God. Yahweh thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Yahweh did not set his love upon you, referring to the Israelites, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people, because all nations they was established. All right, we got established last. It says, because we got to say the best for last. It says, but because Yahweh loved you, right? Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. And because he would keep the oath, meaning the promise, which he has sworn unto your fathers. What fathers? The fathers of the promise, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Have Yahweh brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Now, therefore, that Yahweh thy God, he is God, the faithful power, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them, that them is always Israel, that love him. Ultimately, that would be the elect of the nation of Israel. and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them, like how he destroyed them nasty Canaanites. He will not be slack to him that hateth him, he will repay him to his face. Thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command thee this day, and do them. Alright, so that's pretty much it. You know, that's the curse of Ham. That does not apply to the Israelites. Shalom.